What's on your playlist right now?
In my class.
Go to guilty pleasure food.
Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Hello, I'm Renetta Garrison Tull, and I'm the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I came to UC Davis from the East Coast on the cusp of the pandemic, and I'm finally having a chance to fully see and experience UC Davis and the state of California. I've traveled all over the world, all continents but one, and I am passionate about fostering inclusion through connections and honoring rich cultural values globally to increase understanding, appreciation, and success for all in our community.
Welcome to Face, Renetta.
Oh, thank you, Chancellor May. Happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you. I'm glad you were able to come and talk, especially during this period of time, for two reasons. One, this is Black History Month, and two, we're coming up on Principles of Community Week, which I know you're heavily involved in. This is a time we reflect and celebrate our collective values as a university. So I guess my first question is, beyond what we do this week and this month, how can we turn those values into actions on a regular basis at UC Davis to improve equity for all?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. And then with regard to Principles of Community, you know, our Office of Campus Community Relations really helped to set the stage for that programming. And we have people who are doing things here at Davis and at Sacramento. I think that a key thing related to Principles of Community is to remember that these principles are not things that are just aspirational, although the statement itself seems that way. There are policies that are connected to it, and so there are consequences for violating such policies. And I think sometimes people don't remember that. So when we talk about issues related to discrimination, or when we talk about rejecting violence on all forms, those are things that are not just things that are sort of out in the ether, but they're things that we really should hold on to. And I really want to make sure that our community is united around that, and that they are holding on to the principles, knowing that there's something behind it, and it's not just something that we put out there as a campus.
Yeah, it's important for accountability to make sure that there's a backbone behind the principles.
Yes,
I agree.
Absolutely.
I also just mentioned that this is Black History Month, and I think the audience will be curious about any programming or activities or efforts in your office that we center around improving the quality of the experience of our African American students and staff and faculty.
Yes, so we have a newer initiative called Aggie Black Excellence, and it's addressing anti-Blackness. But the key to Aggie Black Excellence is that it connects and partners with a lot of the other initiatives on campus. So we have our Retention Center, our Center for African Diaspora and Student Success, for example, and there's the African Continuum. There are a number of different kinds of programs that are happening not only in the month of February, but throughout the year. The center provides counseling services and career services and those kinds of things. And so our office really tries to uplift those kinds of activities. We try to amplify the activities that are happening for students, and we also serve as sort of a welcoming for students who often come on campus. So I think one of the nicest things that happened recently is one of our colleagues from the library happened to see a group of Black students who were on campus with their high school leader. And so she said, oh, well, let me take you over to the DEI office. Brought them over to the office. We were able to give them some snacks and some swag and just say, welcome to campus. We want to see you here. So we try to be that for people in the community.
I love to hear that. Representation is so important, and the fact that that particular individual could see themselves represented through the efforts of your office is just really outstanding. Yeah. Speaking of Black history, you and I have a history. We're both STEM professionals.
Yes.
Most people don't know about our history. Can you tell people about when we met, or when you first met me? Maybe it's a better way to say it, because I didn't even know about it. So,
Right. So I think, Chancellor, as many people know, you are an icon for many of us who are Black in engineering. I went to Howard University as an undergrad, and as an undergraduate student, I went to my first conference for the National Society of Black Engineers when I was a first-year student as an undergrad. And I remember going to the national conference and seeing you on stage as an officer in that organization. And I think you were doing your PhD at the time or finishing. And it was that idea that, wow, there are Black folks who go and get their PhDs in engineering. That was the first time that I had seen that. And so you talk about representation. It really helped to launch for me and many, many others that notion that we could move forward, we could go on and get master's degrees and PhD degrees, and we could do things in engineering and other STEM fields, and it made us want to do that thing for others.
So I can take a little credit for you going to get your PhD as well, because first impressions matter, right?
They certainly do.
So I'm really happy the way it worked out.
Yeah.
And as a STEM professional, how do you think UC Davis is doing in that area with regard to diversity in STEM? And are there things that we can do differently in the future or better? Can we improve?
So we can always improve.
Mm-hmm.
One of my former mentors would always quote a person, I think it was Aristotle, would say success is never final. And so there are always things that we can continue to do. Among those, I do think that we can continue to take advantage of some of the things that the UC has related to HBCU funding, to bring students from HBCUs to campus, to bring students from HSIs or Hispanic Serving Institutions to campus, to make sure that more students from Native backgrounds, for example, are involved in STEM and supporting their participation in some of the national organizations. We mentioned NSBE as an example, but there's also SHIP, the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. We do take a lot of students to the SOCNAS conference, the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in STEM, and promoting their professional development. So doing more of that, I believe that those kinds of experiences also help with retention, and then making sure that every student is recognized for the brilliance and the contributions that they're going to make, no matter what their background is.
Absolutely. That's our goal, for sure. And I'm happy to see what your office and your efforts are doing to promote that. So many years after that first encounter when you were a freshman at Howard, you came to UC Davis, 2019 in particular, in the middle of the pandemic, as your intro stated. You became our first Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I created the position in the office. So as you've navigated this new position over these past 3 or 4 years, what advice would you share with the audience or with other diversity leaders about that experience and what higher ed needs to do in this space?
So you know what's interesting about that? People often ask me if I had known that this would be the cusp of the pandemic, the whole situation with the horrific murder of George Floyd, all the different things that we've been dealing with, would I still have come to be part of the enterprise? And I tell them, if I was going to do it anywhere, I'm so glad that I'm here doing it at UC Davis, because I do believe that we're doing a lot. We have the support that we need to move forward to work on these things. But in terms of things that I would share for my colleagues and things that I do share with my colleagues, now that I'm also working with our colleagues across the UC with all 10 of the institutions, you have to have a good and strong staff. Our staff in DEI is fantastic because they are experts, they are professionals, they are really good at their jobs, and now we're just making sure that everybody gets a chance to connect to and sort of share what each other is doing. But having a strong staff is really crucial to getting a vision across, to making sure that everyone is on the same page, to making sure that when people need to be autonomous, that they're able to do so and get things done and move priorities forward, that they're able to be team players, and sometimes that balance has to shift. But I think the other thing is that this work is really hard, and people in this position, the half-life for a person who does DEI work can often be very short, 2 to 3 years. And people often contemplate from week to week, am I still going to do this? And so I think you need a very strong support system, a support system that is sort of within the work. I'm very lucky to have that, not only in my office, which helps to support me, but also in the UC. But also outside of that, family, friends, community, and having that support is very, very important. Many times, many of us in these positions are also part of affected communities or historically marginalized communities. So when things happen, they affect us as well. And we have to learn how to be resilient. We have to learn how to continue to move forward in the face of crises. And we need something to fall back on. And for me, I'm glad that at least I still have virtual church to also help on Sundays. So that definitely helps in my case.
I second all of that. The support system is so important in these jobs, and people don't realize how challenging they can be. And, teamwork makes the dream work. So the staff piece is also critical. And speaking of dreams, if you were to think about what DEI looks like in the future at UC Davis and elsewhere, what's your dream situation for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah. So, we have the things that are formalized. So you have the To Boldly Go strategic plan and Goal 3, which talks about diversity. And then within that, we have the diversity and inclusion strategic vision, where we're talking about students, faculty, staff, making sure that we're recruiting and identifying and attracting folks from different backgrounds, that we have a good climate that's going to promote the things that they want to do, working with neighboring communities and having accountability, which is something that you mentioned before. When I first came, I said, I want people to get what they came for, which is a very simple message, right? I want students to come, and if they are coming for their undergraduate degree or a graduate degree, or people coming for a certificate, that they leave with whatever their goal was. They leave with that degree. For staff who are coming, to not only lend their talents, but also to have mobility to provide for their families, I want them to have that in a way that is free of barriers. And for the faculty who are coming to not only sort of profess in their discipline or teach in their discipline, to share their research, I want them to be able to do that and sort of have the freedom to do that. And I will say something else about this, because there's a little story behind it. Years ago, I went to a talk by a Nobel Prize winner, and listening to him, he talked about skiing in the Alps and having these great ideas when he's skiing with his family, and sitting there in the audience, it just made me think, wow, I wish I could, ski in the Alps and have great ideas, and I'm sure other people do as well. And while many people can't afford to have that kind of opportunity, I hope that the campus can provide opportunities for ideas to flow, and places where people don't have to worry about imposter syndrome, where they wonder if they belong, where they'll know that they belong. A place where they don't have to worry about stereotype threat, which means that, people may not perform as well because they perceive that they're thought of as less than. And so we want to make sure that our environments are showing people that they belong, that we want them here, that they're welcome, that we know that they are brilliant, that they have contributions to make. And so if everybody can have that way of thinking, and if everyone can just remember that everyone deserves to be here and deserves to have all of the resources and benefits of the university, then that would be my ideal.
I'm just sitting here thinking how much our mutual visions align. So I'm very comforted by that. Listening
well,
to
you're
you
my
talk.
boss,
well,
so
yeah,
I guess that works out.
That helps, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit. I'm going to
do.
We have a feature that we do in face-to-face. We call it the hot seat.
Oh, my.
And it's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
All it means is I'm going to ask you some very short, rapid-fire questions, and we're looking for a one-word or one-sentence answer.
Okay.
So you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. What is your signature dish that you cook?
Pancakes.
Pancakes, okay. East Coast or West Coast? Now be careful.
All of my family's on the East Coast, with the exception of my husband, who works here. So I still have to say East Coast. And plus, the Eagles are in the Super Bowl this year, and I'm from Philly, so I got to go East Coast right now.
As a 49er fan, I don't support that message. Favorite travel destination? You've been all over the world.
I have been all over the world. I cried when I was on the plane touching down in Africa for the first time, in South Africa. And so I just remember that experience. So I'll leave it there for now.
I had a similar, when I first went to Africa, similar kind of emotional experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so in an alternate universe, what job would you be doing other than the one you're doing now?
Interestingly enough, I think that I would be either a talk show host or I would run a bed and breakfast. Pancakes, talking, right? All of those things all fit together for me. Travel.
You're trying to take my job here. I ask all the guests this question.
Okay.
What is at the top of your playlist right now?
Oh, so there was a song, and I don't know how you pronounce it, but it was the song that won the Grammy for Best Song in Social Change. And I listened to it this morning, and they talk about women life freedom and the situation in Iran. And although I don't understand all of the words, I did look at the translation, and so that was the one that I listened to this morning.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I have to look that one up.
Yes.
Now it's your turn. You get to ask me a question.
Yeah.
Ask me anything.
Okay, so the first question, Chancellor May, that I'd like to ask you is sort of along the same line of keeping it light, I guess. So you are the chancellor of a very large university, and I know you're very serious about your work, and because we're in meetings, sometimes you're in meetings on vacation and so forth, but I know that you do other things as well. You posted recently that you were with your wife at a women's gymnastics game. You posted your playlist on Instagram recently. So what are some things that you want people to know about you that they may not know about you as sort of in your chancellor role?
You know, you hit on some of it. I think people see that title and they have certain preconceived notions about what the person is going to be like. So I like to show that I'm just a normal person. And, you mentioned my wife, and I remember one particular week a while back when I had a pretty good week. I had talked to one of our Nobel laureates, and I had an interview with the New York Times, and I was feeling myself. And my wife said, you got to do laundry today, dude. So brings you right back to normal, back to the ground. So, and she's good at that. My kids are good at that too. The other thing I'll just mention quickly is I want everyone to know how much I care about people here. I care about our faculty and our staff and our students, and even the ones who don't care for me. I care about their safety and their livelihood and their experience here, and I really do take that to heart.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I have another question for you. And even though you're a fairly young chancellor, I would say, in this role, and so you're probably not going to retire for many, many, many years, but are there certain things that you would like to see happen before you retire, whether it's leaving UC Davis or sort of retire from at least this phase of higher education leadership?
I do think I'm too young to think about retiring, but I do get this question every now and then. And I don't have a specific list of things that I want to accomplish, but my general way of doing things is that I like to leave things better than I found them. So I want people to say UC Davis was better after Gary May left his role as chancellor, and that's really the goal. So.
Okay.
Those are good questions, though. Thank you. And really, just thanks for joining me. This is a fascinating conversation. We're grateful for your leadership in the DEI office. I hear that from many different sources. So thank you for that. And thanks, everyone, for watching us on Face to Face. We'll see you next time. Go Ags.